When I was in high school, I was part of a volunteer group. It was the Key Club, associated with the Kiwanis Club, and we did all kinds of volunteering in the community. And as one of the officers of this club, part of my role was to seek out volunteer opportunities in the community that high school students could do. And one of the opportunities I was able to find and plug students into was serving at a Salvation Army soup kitchen, which happens to be really near our school. And I have a memory of serving there myself when I was in high school, of going, I believe it was my first time, and I had never been to a community meal or a soup kitchen before, and I remember going and expecting to kind of do what I was told in the kitchen and then, serve with a spoon, put things on people's plates as they walked by. That was my expectation of what I was going to be doing that day. But it turned out they had people who knew what they were doing, and we actually had probably too many volunteers, too many people that we didn't need that many people in the kitchen, and I didn't know what I was doing, so I was kind of just in the way. And so I kept asking, what can I do to help? And the volunteers who were more regular volunteers, what they would say would be, you can go sit with the people. And I was like, okay, that's not really why I came. I came to do something and help the people, right? And so I'd go sit at a table and kind of awkwardly try to talk to somebody. And then I'd get up and go see if there was something I could do. Oh, can I help serve? Actually, we have enough people to scoop the peas and hand out the forks. They say, go sit with the people. I'm like, okay. I was like, are you sure? And I'd go sit, and I think it maybe took me 3 times of doing this, of asking, well, could I help with this? And people being like, go sit with the people. That I finally stopped asking, and I just sat with the people. And it was kind of weird because I ate with them. I was like, I thought I came to give food to others, and all I did was receive food like everyone else. And I sat with the people, and they talked to me a little bit. I felt very awkward. It's awkward enough talking to people you don't know, but when you're a high school kid, talking to adults that you don't know from a different walk of life than you are, it wasn't necessarily a pleasant experience. It was one that took me out of my comfort zone, and it's one I still remember because it was just so different than the dinners I had been to before. There were similarities, but the people who were there had different things happening in their lives. They didn't have kids who were about to go off to college or kids who were going to go do this activity at school. They had different things. They had kids who were getting rejected from disability or people in retirement who didn't have access to Social Security for whatever reason. They had different stories than what I was used to. And I think it was good for me. At the time, I felt like I was useless, that I came to serve and I wasn't serving. But of course, in hindsight, I'm thinking, actually, I received and I was changed by that experience. I think it has not just that experience, but many experiences like that have changed the way that I live my life. It has made me not want to live in a bubble where I don't interact with people from that social class. It has made me not want to live my life in a way that I can just pretend that people who are struggling to get on disability and getting rejected don't exist, or people who are housing insecure don't exist. I want to live in a way where I am connected to them and know their stories. I want to work together with them. And that transformed me. I also think that story might be a little bit of my own Martha and Mary story. I kept trying to be Martha. I kept trying to help in the kitchen and do the serving, and they kept telling me to be Mary. Go sit at the feet of the people. Go sit and listen to how God is showing up in these people. I came thinking I was going to show up as God for these people. And of course, it's both. You know, for me, I thought I was going to bring God to them by serving this meal, but actually they brought me their stories, and that transformed me and helped me see Christ and how God is active in the world in a new way. The ELCA Global Mission has been doing mission work for many, many years, and there's a long tradition of mission work in Christianity. And a lot of us are uncomfortable sometimes with mission work because historically mission work has had this same kind of dynamic of the assumption that I'm the one with God and I'm going to bring God to you, the one who doesn't have God and who needs me. And there's a power dynamic there in addition to a hubris, and that does nothing to change that power dynamic. Yes, there are people who have more power than others in our community, and those of us with power need to share our resources. But just seeing ourselves as the ones who are giving the service and not receiving, we just keep that power dynamic in play if that's all we ever do, is we see ourselves as the one bringing the gifts to others. I believe that we all have different gifts. We have resources here as a community at St. Andrew. Some of us in our congregation have a lot of material resources, and some of us do not. Same for people out in the world. But just because someone doesn't have a lot of material resources doesn't mean they don't have other resources that we who have material resources desperately need. There is the wisdom from the margins, the life lessons that come from living in poverty, the things about this world that our eyes are not open to because of the way that we live. We need the assets that others can bring to us, potentially even more than they need our money and our food. The only way the world is going to change is if we let ourselves be transformed as well. And so the ELCA has grappled with this, and this has been a tendency in global mission to have this one-sided, they write about it in their website. A lot of mission work historically looked like this. There's God's story, my story, your story. And mission meant bringing God's story to you. God's story is on my side, and you are on the other side, and I'm crossing boundaries to bring God to you. I'm the Savior, right? That wasn't on the website, that part. But that's kind of what they're saying. And what they have worked to do in the ELCA is to change that. They write on their website, the ELCA has organized its global engagement around the theology and practice of accompaniment. And they use the metaphor of walking together with siblings around the world. We believe God is calling us into the world as Lutherans to share the gifts that we have. But we also believe that there's so much we need to learn and so many aspects of the divine presence that we aren't in touch with yet. And so we go out into the world not just to share our resources, but also to receive love and receive the gifts of the community so that we can be transformed too. Back to the website, it says, walking and working together, we seek to accompany our companions. This is defined as walking together in a solidarity that practices interdependence and mutuality. It's not just one-sided, me going to the soup kitchen to provide soup for the one who needs it. There's a mutuality. There's something being provided to me who also needs that something. There's also a vulnerability. The people who told me to go sit with the people, that was vulnerable for me. I mentioned it felt awkward. It was not comfortable. I was asked to be vulnerable in a way I hadn't expected. I really hadn't expected that experience to be one of vulnerability, my idea of being in the kitchen and serving food. I expected that they would be the vulnerable ones, having to receive food from someone else. But I was pushed into a vulnerability that opened my eyes in a new way. Abraham does that in our story. Commentator Kyung-Jin Lee writes about the hospitality of Abraham and that, that verse from Hebrews, do not forget to show hospitality to strangers. By doing so, some have entertained angels without knowing it. That's often thought to refer back to this story that we had as a reading today, the story of Abraham's hospitality. And commentator Lee writes that Abraham's hospitality is not a hospitality based on certainty or obligation, because Abraham doesn't know who his visitors are. He bows before them and invites them in, and his whole home is involved in the act of welcome, but they do this without knowing who they are or what they will or won't get out of this and what risk it will involve to take these folks in. This is a radical act of openness, she writes, exposure and mutual vulnerability. Abraham risks comfort, security, and social boundaries to receive the unknown other. And it is precisely this vulnerability that becomes the space for divine encounter. If you read on past where our verses ended today, you will find that these two visitors eventually start getting referred to as angels and as messengers of God. It just kind of switches at some point. They just start calling them angels in the text. And sometimes they're referred to even as God, the presence of God in humans. Many of you know that I just bought a house, and I am working with the Second Home program, which is a ministry of the Ecumenical Ministries of Oregon, to host an unaccompanied high school student in my home. It's not for sure yet, but I'm pursuing this possibility. And I get a lot of pushback when I share that with people, because people think, well, that's a risk, isn't it? You're bringing someone into your home. They might break your stuff. They might steal your stuff. What does that mean? You just got new carpet. What if they spill on your new carpet? You're going to be so sad. Literally, that's what people are saying. And it's like, yeah. But for me, possibly because of those experiences I had as a kid serving at the soup kitchen, like I said, I don't want to live in a way where I and my stuff are isolated from people in different situations. And so I use that as an example of the way that we get pushback in our culture for being hospitable in a radical way. We're told that's not responsible. You're risking too much. And I'd love for us to just reflect on that, where we see that in the world and where we see that in our own lives, the places that we have chosen to be more conservative, to not take the risk of welcoming others in. I'm not saying we can take every risk every time. We are humans and only have so much bandwidth. But I am saying that if we want to encounter God, we have to let God in. We have to go sit with the people. We have to invite them into our homes and sometimes take that risk, knowing that it's not always going to pan out. Sometimes the carpet will get ruined, and that is okay. That is part of how we are called to decenter ourselves and our own material resources and center the relationship of encounter with God. I want to close with a small section from our own Julie Augustin's book, Holy Ground, an Alphabet of Prayer. Thank you to Connie Losk for bringing this book in for me today. I need to buy it myself. Hospitality brings with curiosity and eagerness. Oh, sorry. I was like, that doesn't make sense. Hospitality begins with curiosity and eagerness to embrace and to be interested in others. It's about sharing who we are and what we have. In a world where strangers often are feared and where all of us are guilty of shunning the other, hospitality requires risk. It asks us to trust, to open ourselves, to show generosity and genuine interest in others. Perhaps this is one of the ways that hospitality becomes prayer. Let us grow in our prayer, in our hospitable prayer. Amen.